Welcome to the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast, where we hope to inspire you to embrace your God-given gifts, skills, and passions in order to lead with confidence. I'm your host, Esther Littlefield, a pastor's wife, business owner, mom, and writer. My co-host is Holly Kane, and together we chat about important issues that Christian women leaders face. In addition, we interview other women just like you who lead in various roles, from church to community to business. Through this podcast, we offer you encouragement, tools, and resources to help you on your leadership journey. We're so glad you're here with us. Welcome to episode 40. Today, I'm here with Holly, and we are going to be chatting about business again. If you didn't take a listen in episode 38, Holly interviewed me about my business journey. But today we want to dive into some best practices and principles for Christian women in business.
So as we've thought about this issue, we've come across a few questions. Some of them were our own questions, but we also got some feedback from the members of our Purposeful Leadership group. So we'd love for you to join that group. We love to hear your different questions, different thoughts on things, and perhaps your idea or question could be in a future episode. So go on over to Facebook and join us there.
Yeah.
So some of the questions that we have been thinking about are, what sets Christian business owners apart from the rest? Should we follow the standard business advice out there, or should we be doing things differently? Does our business have to specifically be faith-based? And how do we know if we have a business or ministry?
Yeah, so we've really been wrestling with these questions, and it's taken us quite a while to kind of put together this episode because we've really wanted to discuss it and think about it a lot. And we have some principles we're going to share today that we feel are important for us as business owners, or even if you're not a business owner, but maybe you work in the business world.
Mm-hmm.
And we hope that this will be beneficial for you. And maybe you're saying, but I don't have a business of my own. Or maybe you're considering ways that you could work from home and earn some extra income. Then I would love for you to stick around today as well, because I think you'll still enjoy what we have to share. And I also want to let you know that I'm going to offer a free workshop sharing some ways that you can earn income from home.
Mm.
That will just give you some ideas if this is a place where you are at, where maybe you would like to have a business of your own, or maybe you would like to earn extra income. Then I will be sharing that. So go to the show notes for this episode,
Mm-hmm.
estherlittlefield.com/episode 40, where you can get the link to go ahead and sign up for that free workshop. So before we dive into the principles today, I think we should start with this question, Holly.
Yeah.
How do we know if we have a ministry or a business?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. That was really, I think, one of the biggest things that came up in the Facebook group,
Mm-hmm.
right? Was people sort of wrestling with this issue. And coming up in a couple weeks, you're going to hear a conversation that I had with Jenny Randall. And she is a Christian woman in business and an author. And she has some great thoughts on this topic. But I'll just share kind of my thoughts. And then, Holly, if you have something to share too, of course, I want to hear what you think.
Yeah, of course.
But what I believe is that we all have a ministry regardless of what kind of work we do. We're all called to bring glory to God in whatever we do, and we're all called to make disciples.
Mm-hmm.
So my belief is that we can do this in our lives regardless of what we do for work. And some people may be called to what I would consider vocational ministry. So like my husband is a pastor, right? So that's his job, but it's also a ministry.
Right.
And then I think the other side of this is to look at how we define ministry versus business. And
Yeah,
part of this is like semantics. We talked about this ahead of
it
time.
is.
It's just sort of how we just talk about it. But if we're talking about specifically the organization of a ministry, it would be usually considered a nonprofit, and it's usually going to be a church or an outreach organization
Mm-hmm.
that it doesn't mean it doesn't generate money, but it's more about how that money is handled, right? And
Yeah.
how the organization approaches um, how they operate. And then a business is really going to be more of something where there's a service or a product being offered, and people are paying for that product or service, and it's like an exchange of goods, and it's a for-profit endeavor. So what about you, Holly? Do you have any other thoughts on how this issue plays out for us as Christians?
Yeah, so I definitely do. I think that it's difficult when, for some people, when you have a certain type of skill set. So, like, for example, I feel like people who are in, like a Christian counseling type like mindset or have that skill set, it's so difficult for them to kind of figure this out and weigh this out. So that's kind of the person or the different skill set that I see that kind of has this as sort of a like a hard question. Where do
Yeah,
I land? Am I
yeah,
really a business? Am I a nonprofit? Or am I a ministry? And with something like that, you could really go both ways. And so I think that um, it's important to kind of figure out what you need, honestly.
hmm
I mean, if you need to be making money and you need to be supporting your family, unfortunately, you might not be able to do this as a total nonprofit endeavor. But
yeah,
one of the things that I think is crucial about owning a business, and we'll talk about it a little bit later perhaps, is just because you own a business doesn't mean you have to do everything to make money.
yeah,
You can be generous as a business owner and do some things pro bono for free, helping other people out. And so while while it's a good idea when you're starting off to make that distinction, okay, I am going to be a business or I am going to be a ministry,
hmm
that doesn't mean that you have to run your business to make every penny on every hour that you spend or every single product that you make.
yeah,
Um, you know, we'll talk about that later because it has to
yeah,
do with how you handle money. But
yeah,
I don't want everyone to think that just because you're a business, you have to make money on every single thing that you do. You can be
right.
generous, and your business can be used in a ministry fashion as well. So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
definitely. Okay, so we kind of wanted to just tackle that first question because it will affect the rest of our conversation. And
yeah,
really, this conversation is based on a business. So we're going to be talking about this as Christian business owners, as Christian business women who want to bring glory to God in what we do, and how should we operate? What are some of the best practices? What are the principles that we should operate by? So let's talk about this question of what sets Christian business owners apart from the rest. Holly, what do you think that is?
yeah. So, I definitely think it's our worldview. So, we understand and view the world differently because of our faith. And so, therefore, we recognize that our business is not our own and it belongs to God. I think that because of this worldview and because of our focus, that sort of leads us to our first principle. So, having a kingdom focus instead of an earthly one. And this should affect every aspect of our business and our life. Um, and I think it's important to sort of start right off from there because if you get into business and you get into a certain way of doing things and a way of thinking about things, it's really hard to change gears and to go, okay, wait, hold on. This is actually a business that should have a kingdom focus. Not that it can't be done. Absolutely. But it is difficult once you get into those ruts and those mindsets to then flip back. So,
Yeah,
yeah, it's good to have this sort of principle really defined in your mind before you even begin. So,
yeah, yeah. And I think of the verse Colossians 3:2. It says, "Set your mind on things that are above, not on things that are on earth." And this is kind of the approach that we should have as Christians, is that we recognize that what's here on earth is not the only purpose of why we're alive, right? And it's really
yeah.
an eternal focus. So even when we're thinking about a business, which may be providing very practical, everyday services or needs or products,
Hmm.
you know, we can still have that eternal focus when it comes to how we approach our business. So
Absolutely.
I think too, our worldview and the way that we approach this can be how we view work itself. So the work
Hmm.
we are doing is for the glory of God, no matter what kind of work we do. And then that kingdom focus also affects the way we view our money, the way we treat others, which are some other principles we're going to talk about in a few minutes. But this also makes me think of the second question that we mentioned earlier from that we got from our Facebook group and from just our discussions around this is, should we be following the standard business advice that's out there, or should
Mm,
we be doing things differently as Christians? And way back in episode 3, Abby Reich Rockenbaugh shared her perspective on this. And she said that she feels that we might do things differently than what the typical business advice might be.
mm,
And she gave a specific example in her life of how she chose not to pursue an opportunity that looked really obvious and that the typical business coach or business mentor might have said, go for it, like push forward, right? Take the
yeah.
bull by the horns and take this opportunity. But she sensed that God was asking her to just not pursue it and to spend time in prayer and seek wisdom. And by doing that and not pursuing that opportunity, she actually was later given an even bigger opportunity as a result. And the
Mm,
other person reached out to her, offering her something even bigger than what she was thinking might be a good opportunity. So, I definitely think that this kingdom focus principle is important in that we are there's going to be times when we're not going to follow the standard business advice. We're going to be doing things differently because of our faith and because of our worldview. And I think it really goes back to the fact that our business isn't about us. Like ultimately, what we do, what we're doing here on earth, and the time we're spending in our work ultimately isn't about us. So,
yeah.
yeah.
And I think too, it's really important to have that kind of be the basis for everything because as a business owner, as someone who is, you know, looking for, reading the next business books, looking at the next, what's coming up in business, the new ideas and that sort of thing, it's really easy to get um, sort of tossed back and forth with that information. And it's really easy to kind of get lost in all of that
Yeah.
and be like, well, what should I be doing in my business and how should I be handling things? And um, there's nothing new under the sun, right? So, what we really need to be going back to is, we are set apart to do things differently, and that our worldview is not one where we are serving ourselves, but where we're serving a greater kingdom. And so when you have that as your foundation, it is much more stable, first of all, and you're less likely to get swayed by whatever the most recent fad in business is.
Yeah.
And it's really easy to get swayed by those fads when you see that everyone else is doing it. So,
Right. And I think too, I'll just mention one other thought with this is that like everything that we do and all of those ideas that we take in from the gurus and
yeah,
the mentors and all of that, we need to filter through a biblical understanding of
absolutely.
of God, of ourselves, of money, all of it. So, yeah, I think that's super
Yeah.
important as we move forward.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you think is the second principle that we should tackle?
So the second one, I think, is how we handle our money. As Christian business owners, how we view our money is an important factor that sets us apart.
Yeah,
The way we handle our business finances should be no different than how we view our own money. And that view is stewardship rather than a way to grow wealth for just the sake of growing wealth. When we view our business finances in that way, it really gives us a good perspective on how to handle things and what to do next. So we're working in God's business and we're handling God's money. So what we do with that really matters. And so there's a couple things that I think are important to remember when we are sort of thinking about how we handle our money. Number one is money mindset. And that is pretty much just basically what I said. This is God's money, this is God's business, and how we handle it is super important. But another aspect of that is our relationship with money. And as we grow and as we have our life over the years, our relationship with money gets more and more solidified, and it can be very positive and it can be very negative. And one of the things that I've seen through my bookkeeping business is money mindset can have a huge impact on how people handle their business and how people can either feel stuck or move forward or whatnot. So it's really important to kind of do some mining in your own heart and your own mind as to what your relationship with money is.
Yeah.
Um,
Can I jump in there?
yeah, go ahead.
I think this is something that I've learned a lot about over the past few years in business. And I think one of the biggest things that God has shown me is that part of this is really trusting Him. Like
Yeah.
part of money mindset is trusting that God is the owner of everything on
Hmm.
the earth, right? And
Yeah.
so I feel like sometimes our decisions as business owners, when we make decisions financially, they can be based out of fear and based out of a
Yes.
background of being always in this mindset of there's not enough. What if I
Hmm.
don't have enough for XYZ?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that God wants us to be like, oh, I have all the money in the world, so I'm going to buy all the things. But
Right.
if we truly have a mindset of trusting God and God is in control of the finances and God is the owner of all of it, then that's going to affect how we approach decisions in our business with money.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
definitely. And there's a lot to be said out there right now about money mindset. And
Mhm.
so I would just encourage you that if you are um, out there looking at money mindset, and there's a lot of things around the word manifestation, and just putting that stuff out there. I just really want to encourage you to filter, as we've said before, filter all of that through God's word and what He has to say about money. And if it doesn't line up, then throw it out.
Yeah. Yeah,
So.
absolutely.
Um, so number two, really important thing is to take your business finances seriously. Don't neglect them. Um, so as a business owner, you're looking for where that next dollar is coming from. And if you don't actually look back and take an account of where the dollars came in and where the dollars left, you don't really have an idea of where you are, where you stand, and what your next move should be. Um, and so I know that a lot of business owners do neglect their books and then at the end of the year get into big trouble because they have so much to do. So I have some specific principles that I think all business owners should follow when it comes to taking their money seriously and best practices. So I'm going to put a link in the show notes to a free download that I'll have on my website for you. And I just really think that it's super important to kind of lay the groundwork um, and take these things seriously. Part of stewardship is, counting every cost, counting where it's all going, and so
Yeah.
it's super, super important to do that.
Yeah. And Holly, you are a bookkeeper, right? Like
Yes,
your
yes,
business
I
is
am.
bookkeeping. I don't think we mentioned that. So that
I
helps
didn't.
people. Yeah. So like your business is
Mm,
serving other business owners who need help with tracking their books and keeping
yeah,
track of all their money. And so you have seen some things that you feel like would be really helpful for anyone who runs a business to be like some principles that they can
absolutely.
put into place, which is what will be in that download.
Yes,
So
yes,
it's not
absolutely.
just
Thank you.
ideas based on your own, like just your opinion. It's like
No,
what your work is.
I do have a little bit of experience when it comes to
Yeah,
this, so.
exactly. Okay, awesome.
Okay, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. Okay, number three, and the last sort of thing to remember when it comes to money and how we handle money as a Christian business owner is it's important to remember that it's not wrong to make money. Hebrews 13:5 says, keep your life free from the love of money and be content with what you have. For he has said, I will never leave you or forsake you. And this is so, so important. It's important to remember that the Bible doesn't say that money itself is evil. It's the love of money. And so it's very easy for a business owner to be chasing after that next dollar, like I said, and that can quickly turn into the love of money. And so it's really important that we make it not so much about making money, but handling the business well and doing things well and doing them, as we said before, in that kingdom focus. And I as a business owner just look at it as though I'm going to do what God has called me to do in this business, and I'm going to let him bring the increase or the decrease. And I'm going to just do what he's called me to do, what he has skilled me to do, and do it the best that I can. And so anyway, I just think it's really important to remember that it's not the actual, it's not, wealth is not wrong, but it's the love and sort of the hoarding of that
Yeah.
money that makes the difference.
Right.
We need to be content with what we have. So
Right. And if it becomes an idol, if it becomes an
yes.
obsession, then you've gotten off track.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, so this is one of the things that I was thinking about because we have this discussion sometimes, especially with Christian women that I talk to, and
Hmm.
they're questioning like, "Oh, I don't know if I do this business online or if I do this thing, if I make this product, like I feel bad. I feel bad charging for it or I feel bad asking for money, right?"
Hmm.
But I don't hear any of my friends saying, "Is it wrong for me to go get a job and ask for like expect a paycheck?"
Yeah.
You know?
It's so funny.
So for some reason we've gotten this mixed up in our heads and I agree with you, like there's nothing wrong with using your skills and your talents
Hmm.
to earn money. The issue becomes when it becomes an obsession or you're so focused on that next dollar like you said that that's all you can think about,
Hmm.
or you're not stewarding that money well.
Yeah.
There's a podcast episode that I listened to a couple years ago when I was really kind of new in the online space. Um, and it's with Kat Lee, who had a podcast called How They Blog. The podcast is no longer running, but it still is live. So you can still go back and listen to the old episodes. And there was an episode number 9. She talks with blogger Amy Lynn Andrews, and they have a really good discussion on that episode about the issue of making money, and they're specifically talking about bloggers making money. And I think,
Hmm.
again, I know a lot of people, listeners of our podcast and friends that have blogs, and they wrestle with that question of, oh, should I make money with my blog or should I make money with these things that I'm providing for my audience? And so I would encourage you, if this is a question that you've struggled with, to go listen to that episode. We'll link it in the show notes so you can just click right over there to take a listen. Also, another good reference point for this discussion is episode 35 of our podcast, where I talked with Melissa Whaley, and she does taxes for business owners. She works with people virtually, but she talked about this whole issue of how we handle money and how we can approach it as Christians and be honest with our finances and things like that.
Yeah.
So I would definitely encourage you to take a listen to that.
So, and I think I just want to circle back to one quick thing. Um, we've both mentioned that sort of obsession with the next dollar. And I think a lot of times when we think about love of money, we just think about that for people who have a lot or for people who um, are wealthy or are doing super well. We think that that's only a problem for them,
Mhm.
and that is not the case. So I want to just challenge you as well that the love of money can also affect people who are struggling, who are super poor, who are trying to just get that next dollar to satisfy their needs. And this is a very hard discussion to have because it's very difficult when you're in that position to not be looking for that next dollar. But just as God says in his word that he looks out for um, the little birds, they don't worry about what they're going to eat next, and who clothes the lilies, those sorts of things. Like, God is looking out for you, and God is watching out for you, whether you have millions in your bank account or whether you have $5 in your bank account.
Mhm.
And the love of money can affect both rich, middle class, and poor. And so when our obsession becomes money, that is when it's a wrong perspective and it's a wrong attitude. So I just want to encourage you. I know that's really hard to hear, especially when you feel like, well, I can't even put food on the table for my family. It's more about God protecting and keeping us and allowing others to pour into our lives if they can, when they can, than it is about, where you're going to earn that next dollar. So
Yeah.
um, it's more about a heart perspective than really a physical perspective, as in what you're actually doing. It's more about your heart. So
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's
Okay.
such a good point to make. And the other thing I would think, I just want to mention this too, is that, sometimes I think we take that principle to an extreme
Mm-hmm.
of saying, okay, well, God's got this, so I'm just going to
Yep.
trust him to provide.
Oh, yeah.
But then we have the capability of
Yes.
getting a job or working or earning money,
Mm-hmm.
and we choose not to because we're saying, well, I'm just trusting God.
Yeah.
So
That's
I
a
think,
really good caveat.
yeah, so I'm just going to throw that out there that like maybe God has given you a skill.
Mhm.
Maybe you're at home, maybe you've got a couple kids, but if you are struggling financially and if you have a skill or a service or something that you could offer the world that they would pay for, that might be God saying, "This is how I'm gonna provide for you," you know?
Yes.
So,
Mhm.
it's gotta be between you and God, you've gotta talk to him about that, but I think there are times where, yes, we have to trust God, we have to say, "I'm not gonna become obsessed with it," but at the same time, I can take action
Yeah.
to, use what God has given me, use the
Yeah.
skills and the tools that he has given me in front of me. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important, as part of that little caveat, just to say, like, even if you can't get a job using your skills, any job that puts food on the table for your family can be a ministry to your family, and you can see as a ministry. It still puts food on the table, it supplies that need, and you can slug it out while you're looking for
Yeah,
the great job that actually utilizes your skills and
yeah,
training. So yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And rant. Although if you wanna hear more rants like that, listen to Dave Ramsey because he'll tell you how it is, right? If you're trying to pay off debt, he talks about working 2 or 3 jobs, and that
Yeah.
isn't practical for everyone, but, there are times where we have to sacrifice.
Sometimes
Um,
that has to be done. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
okay,
Alright, so
we
as
need
a
to move
business
on.
owner as a business owner, I'm gonna talk about the 3rd principle that I think is really important, and that is that we believe we should treat our clients and customers as people made in God's image and
Mhm.
not just as a means to an end. So I think that if you're a Christian business owner, then every person you interact with should be treated with dignity and respect because they're made in God's image. And
Mm.
that means that there may be times where even if you hold different values than them, or if that person is rude or unkind to you, you still have the choice to treat that person with kindness and
Mm.
to show God's love.
Yeah.
Um, it also means that we're not going to see our clients or customers just as dollar signs or
Mhm.
stats on our spreadsheet, but really as real people.
Yeah.
So I think this comes down to as well, like for me, practically operating with honesty and integrity when I'm dealing with clients.
Mm.
There certainly have been times where I could have said something cost XYZ when it didn't, or charge a client this amount, but that wasn't the right thing to do. So I think, so whenever you're dealing with clients, with customers, and especially dealing with their money, being honest and treating them with respect and with integrity is super important in my book as a Christian business owner. So,
Yeah.
Holly, any other thoughts on that principle?
Yeah, so I think that, this is kind of a reminder that is sort of out in the world too. You never really know what people are going through. And you never know what your kindness in some of the mundane things of life can really mean to somebody. And there is a lot of, I see a lot in, social media and viral videos and stuff, like the people that just take the time to really love people and what a huge impact it has. But one of the things that I think that we forget as Christians is we have an eternal love that we can offer them.
Mhm.
And yes, it's great to sit down with people and to show them love, but it's also great to remember that, we have a salvation. We have a an eternal love that we can offer them. And I know it's difficult in secular jobs where that line is. But if we look at our jobs as a ministry and as a way that we can sort of meet people in their needs where they are, a lot of times you don't even need to say, God loves you, or you don't even need to
Mhm.
say his name. People know that you are. People oftentimes can just tell that you're a Christian and that you love them with an eternal love that is somehow different than anything they've experienced
Yeah.
before. Um, so I just want to remind you that it's sometimes very difficult to deal with people who hold different values, and as you mentioned, who are rude or unkind. But um, we never know what their background is with church or with Christians or with what they might be going through, and you might be the person that changes their perspective on God and how much He loves them. And so it's just really important to remember that as you're setting up your values for your business and as you're, working day to day in the mundane things of it,
Yeah.
um, how you're dealing with people. So
Yeah. And I think too, this kind of goes back to this question of does my business have to be faith based to be effective as a Christian,
absolutely,
right?
yeah,
And my answer is no. I mean,
yeah,
what
hmm,
my Morningstar business is not a faith based business, but I have faith. And so everything that I do operates out of that perspective. And like
yeah,
you said, I work with clients who have different worldviews, different faiths, and
hmm,
I view it as an opportunity to show them, like you said, show them Christ's love
yep,
in how I treat them, in how I operate with them, in the excellent service that I provide. Like
hmm,
that can be a witness in and of itself without
yep,
me saying to them, this is a Christian business and we are going to serve Christian. If
absolutely,
I was to say, I'm only going to serve Christian business owners, I'm actually losing an opportunity to minister to people that might
yeah,
not otherwise get to know him.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah. Okay. So let's go on to our fourth principle. And this is one that I feel strongly about. And it's that with our marketing, we can be strategic, but not sleazy.
Mm,
So I just yesterday saw someone post something on Facebook and she had gotten this mailer and she posted it and said, "Oh, this is such a scam." And I looked at it and I read it and I realized it's not a scam. Like it was a legitimate business, but the marketing technique that they used was not exactly forthright. So they were
mm,
kind of trying to get people to take this to do this test thing, and it was making it sound like it was required that everybody had to do it, and it was completely going to be that they were going to offer this free thing and then they were going to pitch people a product, which is it's fine to do that, but it was more about the approach that they took. And
mm,
so I think there's a lot of things that we can do as business owners and in marketing that are technically legal and that might even be praised in the business world as like, hey, this is going to be really successful. This technique is really, really going to bring you lots of business or lots of leads. But sometimes those are actually, sleazy approaches. They're not
yeah,
forthcoming. And so I think that as a Christian, my goal is to be strategic about my marketing and about how I approach my business, but not to ever be sleazy or unethical or dishonest.
mhm.
So I think that the other thing about marketing that's really important is not to become desperate in our marketing attempts.
Yeah.
And again, this goes back to the issue of the worldview that we talked about earlier, as well as our money mindset, that I don't have to come across or be desperate in how I market my services or my products or whatever I'm putting out there, because I know that God is there and He's providing for me, and He's going to bring what is needed. You know,
Right.
and so I think that this can be the case a lot of times. I see, unfortunately, with certain types of businesses, where people are saying, "Oh, I just need X amount more in sales to hit my goal this month. Won't you buy a product?" Or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think that unfortunately that comes across poorly to potential customers. It also makes you look really desperate, you know?
Yeah.
So I would say, as a Christian, I don't think that it's necessary to do either one of those approaches, to be
Yeah.
either sleazy about it, like dishonest about it, or to be desperate.
And I think this goes back to what you said in your when I did the interview with you. Business is all about relationships, and it's not even it is about those other strategic business relationships with other business owners, but it's the relationship you have with your customers and your clients. And if you start that relationship off with manipulation, then right out of the gate, you're in a bad spot to have a healthy long-term relationship with a customer or a client. And what you really want to do is foster a long-term customer who turns into a fan, who turns into a huge loyalist to your
Yeah.
brand. And if you start off right out of the gate with manipulation or sleazy tactics, then you are already starting on a shaky foundation. And so, though a lot of that marketing tactic and technique is your first impression to that person, and that first impression says a lot. And so it's very important to have integrity and honesty even in those first things that they see about your brand, or the first things they see about your product or service. How you portray yourself
Yeah.
is huge. So
Yeah. And again, I'm just going to say this. I don't think it's wrong to sell. I don't think it's wrong to
absolutely.
use marketing tools and techniques.
Hmm.
And there will still be people that will take offense to something that you're doing.
Hmm.
And that may mean that they have an issue, not you. So if
Right.
you know you're operating ethically and honestly, and you're following, you know, honest principles, then there may still be people that don't like what you're doing, and you're going to have to just move on from those people. There's still
Yeah.
going to be people that are not going to buy your product, not going to buy your service, are going to tell you you're too expensive or you're too this or that.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong if
Yeah.
you get that feedback. But I think you have to know that you're not doing anything dishonest. And if you're questioning that, then you might need to look at what you're doing.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay.
Uh,
So, oh, do you have another thought?
no, no.
Okay.
I was just going to start with the next thing.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Our fifth and final principle is that as Christians, we operate out of our core values. And so, what does that mean? What are core values? Well, our core values are ways that we make decisions. We all have them, but we're not all intentional about identifying them. And so these core values can really be a guide into the business decisions that we make. And we actually discussed this in episode 36 when we talked about ditching balance for surrender. In the first point, we talked about setting up your life, and getting clear on these will really help you make clear decisions about what your business should be going for, what it should be shying away from, all of those sorts of things. Our core values should be connected to our faith in some way. So therefore, the decisions that we make may look different than what it might look like for someone else. And Esther, you had an example of this.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I've seen a lot of business owners that I follow online, and I see some of them talking about, either hustling, 24/7, or, working your business as much as you possibly can. And often it seems like their business comes first in their life.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's the most important thing, right? And so even though I respect them and I see that they've had success, it's not lining up with my core values of how I want to operate in my life and in my business. So my faith and my family are always going to be more important than my business.
Mhm.
And I never want my business to take over my entire life. I don't want to be a crazy person working 24/7 and never taking a break or doing something fun or,
Right.
having time with my family. So the way I approach my business is going to look differently than some of those people because of my core values. And
Mm.
I think it goes back to what you said earlier, that everything that we take in for advice, whether it's from books or podcasts or blogs or anything that we're people we're following, we need to filter it through um, this biblical worldview, and we need to decide, okay, I'm going to hold on to this principle, but I'm going to get rid of that one, right?
Yep.
So we don't necessarily
Absolutely.
have to throw out everything they say, but we do need to take it with a grain of salt and make sure that it's lining up with where we feel God is leading us. And if it doesn't, we can throw it out, you know? So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think, as I mentioned prior, when you have these foundations, when you have these core values, it can really help you not feel tossed around in the business world.
Hmm.
Because if you are, looking at what's going on around you and you're looking at what other people are doing in business, it can get very, um, that FOMO thing, fear of missing
Yes.
out. Yeah. So you can definitely get that and think, oh my gosh, if I don't do X, Y, and Z strategy, then I'm going to miss out on all that money or all that business or all those leads.
Yeah.
And if that strategy does not line up with your core values, then you need to ditch it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And if you don't have those core values decided on before that happens, you're going to get lost and it's going to be very difficult to make those decisions. And it's going to be very difficult to say no because you don't know what you're saying yes to.
Yeah.
Um, you don't realize that you're saying yes to your core values and you're saying yes to better business relationships and yes to better money management and yes to all those things because you're saying no to this, new thing that's coming up, this new way of doing things or this new strategy. So
Yeah.
um yeah, if there's one thing that you take away from this, I think it's probably this one, right,
Yeah.
is to have your core values really firmly planted. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say too with that, like when you're considering um business and business mentors, business advice, I would say it's fine to take in a lot and a lot of different perspectives, but choose one or two people that you want to follow or want to kind of view as mentors that do line up with your core values.
yeah.
See if you can find those people who are in line with your faith perspective and your life perspective, that then you can kind of stick with them. And again, it doesn't mean that you're going to do everything they say because we all have brains and God has given us wisdom in
Hmm.
our personal situations. But, you know, ask God to show you who would be one or two people that you can look to for that advice or for that mentorship or coaching, whatever it might be, that will line up with your core values so that you can be less worried about, oh, are they going to totally throw me off track?
Right, right. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to kind of wrap up this conversation. We hope that these five principles have been helpful for you to consider and give you some things to think about, especially if you work in the business world. Even if you are not the business owner, I think it's still possible to live by these principles
Definitely.
and to operate by them. And if you're in a situation where you're seeing that these things are not taking place and you're being forced to make choices on a regular basis that maybe don't line up with with biblical principles, then you might be looking at, do I need to consider another place to work or another
Yeah.
option?
Yeah.
Um, so if you're looking for a way to work from home, maybe right now you are looking for another opportunity, or maybe you've considered starting a business, or doing something different than what you're doing right now, I would love to have you join me for the free workshop that I'm doing about ways to earn money working from home. I'm just going to give you some ideas and some options that are out there, and a lot of it's going to be based on things that I have actually done. So I've got experience, as you heard in episode 38, with a lot of different types of businesses, and I'm going to share some of those things. So head over to the show notes for this episode to sign up, so you can make sure that you can join us live. So thanks, Holly, for having this conversation. I think that we covered a lot of ground and hopefully gave some people some things to think about. So
Yeah. I hope we weren't too ranty. I think we have a lot of opinions on this, but
yeah, we do. Well, hey, if you got feedback for us, if you're
yes.
listening right now, if you have feedback, I want to tell you this. We don't always mention this, but you can email us. If
Yeah.
you have feedback, you can email podcast@estherlittlefield.com. If you don't want to post it publicly, if you have a private feedback to share, whether it's
Yeah.
good or bad, we do want to hear it. So please email us, let us know. Of course, if you have something good to say, you can leave us a review on
Love those.
on Apple Podcasts, or you can come into our Facebook group and chat with us there. Like, we really do
Yeah.
love to get to know you, because as Holly said at the beginning, when we're creating these episodes, we really want to create something that's going to be beneficial for you who are listening. So
Yeah.
we want to hear that feedback. But again, feel free to email us if you want to tell us something privately. So
Yeah. We love connecting with our listeners. So
yes,
yeah, reach out. We want to hear what you have to say. So
exactly.
okay, so we are going to end with a fun question like we do every week, or every time that you and I talk, I guess
Yeah.
I should say.
Yeah.
I don't know. We haven't done any of these crazy questions with any of our interviewees. Maybe we
Yeah.
should try that.
I feel
Maybe
like
with someone we know really well.
yeah, maybe like their second time on, we'll
Maybe.
pop
Okay.
one of these questions.
Okay. Okay, Esther. So, have you ever won an award, or what did you get nominated for in your school yearbook?
Okay. I was totally like a nerdy student, so I did win some awards when I was younger. But I'm going to share what I got nominated for in my school yearbook. I always went to like a really small Christian school, except for just a few years in my experience. I was in pretty small schools. And so one year when I was in elementary school, at some point, they did these superlatives, right? For everybody in the school got something. And I was nominated as most organized. And I think I was like in 4th grade or something like that. And I was noted as the most organized student. And it's just hilarious, like looking back, because I am still organized. I like to be organized, but like my life doesn't always look organized. So I think I was really good at it when I was younger, because all I had to do was like keep my schoolwork organized. There wasn't a lot of life to manage at that point. But yeah, that was my like nomination in the school yearbook that I remember specifically. So all right, what about you, Holly? I want to know if you have won awards or get nominated for something in your school yearbook.
So, there were over 100 kids in my graduating class. So, not everyone got nominated for any sort of superlative in high school. But in 5th grade, we had like a 5th grade graduation kind of like dinner. And our teachers did what were called the Elmer's Glue Awards, which were basically like superlatives. Everyone got an award and they were made up every single time. There was
Yeah,
not like one standing award.
right.
Each person got their own kind of award. So, and it was cool. They did a lot of work on it. They had the Elmer's glue bottles like put on these stands and they were all like painted gold and and stuff. So anyway, I got the Imelda Marcos Award. Do you know who Imelda Marcos is?
No.
Okay, so She was a Filipino socialite. She was a congresswoman, and she was the first lady of the Philippines for 21 years.
Oh my word. What?
And she is famously known for having a ton of shoes. A ton of shoes. And I guess she was a very either foremost in fashion or just really enjoyed it. But anyway, I have no idea why I got this award.
Did you have a lot of shoes in 5th grade?
No, I don't.
Because I know you have a lot of shoes now. Because your son has told me about all your shoes.
Hey, listen, when we moved, I pared them down by at least half. I have, or even more than that. I might have only like 40% of the shoes I had before. But isn't it so funny? I totally remember the award. I remember the name of it. I
Yeah.
know who this person is, but I have no idea why I got it in 5th grade. So
That's hilarious. That is so funny.
So,
Oh my
but
word.
one thing that I hope does not come true is that Imelda Marcos was imprisoned for like, I don't know if it was like money, like smuggling or like, I don't know. But anyway,
Oh.
she was, for corruption. She was in prison
Oh,
for corruption. So,
okay.
yeah.
That would go against our biblical principles of money management
Of
that we
money.
talked about earlier.
So, so I'm glad that I might only resemble the shoe thing and not the
Right.
other side of it. So
Oh my goodness.
I'm gonna have to
That's
ask my
funny.
mom. Maybe she knows why I got that award, but
Crazy, crazy.
I don't know.
All right, guys. So thank you so much for sticking with us, for
Yep.
listening to this episode. I'm excited for the next few weeks of episodes. We have some more amazing interviews with other women talking about both business and ministry. And soon there's going to also be a conversation that we had with Holly and our dear friend Sandy all about women's ministry. So
Yeah.
those are some of the things coming up in the next few weeks. So if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss a coming episode. Thanks for joining us on the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. We look forward to chatting with you next week. And don't forget, your leadership matters, and it's time for you to embrace your gifts and lead with confidence.